In early 2024, something unusual began to appear across different countries. It was not a single dramatic event. There was no crisis headline, no sudden collapse, no obvious trigger. Instead, people began noticing small changes in everyday prices. A cup of coffee cost a little more. A grocery bill felt slightly heavier. A flight ticket seemed just a bit higher than before. At first, these changes looked normal, but when viewed together, they told a different story. Coffee was often the first place where people noticed it. A drink that had stayed the same price for years suddenly became more expensive. Most customers did not question it deeply. Small price increases are common in food businesses. Rent goes up, ingredients become more expensive, energy costs change, so people paid and moved on. But what made this situation different was not the increase itself, but how widely and quickly it started appearing in different places at the same time. Then, the same pattern appeared in aviation. Airline ticket prices began rising across multiple routes and multiple countries. It was not limited to one airline or one region. Different companies operating in different markets were adjusting prices in the same general direction. Travelers started noticing that flights they had booked before were now noticeably more expensive. For many, it felt like a coincidence, but for analysts watching the data, it was becoming harder to ignore the timing. Food prices followed soon after, not just one product, but entire categories: bread, dairy, cooking oil, packaged goods. The increase was not extreme in a single moment, but steady and widespread. Households began to feel it slowly, week by week, as shopping bills became slightly harder to predict. The interesting part was that these changes were not isolated. They appeared across different retailers, in different cities, almost at the same time. When researchers began mapping these changes, a pattern started to emerge. Price increases were not happening randomly across industries. They were appearing in clusters. Coffee, transport, food, and consumer goods were all moving upward within similar time frames. The industries were different. The companies were different. The countries were different. Yet, the direction of movement was strangely aligned. This raised an important question. Was something connecting these decisions, or was the world simply reacting to the same pressures at the same time? Journalists and financial analysts began investigating the phenomenon. Some believed it was straightforward economics. Inflation, energy costs, and supply chain pressure could explain rising prices. But others were not convinced. If inflation was the only cause, why were some price changes happening almost simultaneously across unrelated sectors? Why were different companies reacting in such similar ways at nearly the same time? These questions pushed the investigation beyond simple explanations. Attention quickly shifted toward large corporations. After all, companies are the ones that set prices. If there was coordination, pressure, or influence, it would likely be found at that level. Investigators began looking for signs of communication between firms. They searched for agreements, meetings, or signals that could explain synchronized pricing behavior. But what they expected to find was not what the data revealed. Inside boardrooms, decisions still appeared independent. Each company had its own leadership, its own strategy, and its own market pressures. Yet when analysts compared outcomes across different organizations, similarities began to appear. Pricing adjustments, cost responses, and timing patterns often aligned more closely than expected. This did not necessarily mean coordination, but it suggested that something deeper than individual decision-making might be influencing outcomes. Investigators compiled data sets from multiple industries. What they found was not a single smoking gun, but a pattern of repeated alignment. Companies in different sectors were often responding to similar signals in similar ways. There were no visible agreements, no direct instructions, no central authority coordinating actions. Instead, the system appeared to be producing similar outcomes through independent but parallel decision. The investigation shifted again. If companies were not directly coordinating, perhaps the explanation lay in the environment they all shared. Supply chains, energy markets, logistics networks, and global trade routes connect every major industry. A disruption in one area can influence prices everywhere else. Slowly, a new possibility emerged. Maybe the story was not about hidden coordination. Maybe it was about shared pressure acting on a tightly connected world. One of the first major factors investigators examined was logistics. Modern global trade depends on shipping networks that connect continents. Every product on a shelf has likely traveled through multiple ports, warehouses, and transport systems before reaching a store. When these systems become more expensive to operate, costs do not rise in isolation. They spread across everything connected to them. This creates a chain reaction that affects industries far beyond the original source of the change. Fuel costs are another critical driver. Transportation of goods by sea, air, and land depends heavily on energy prices. When fuel becomes more expensive, every part of the supply chain is affected. Shipping companies adjust rates, airlines increase ticket prices, delivery services revise fees. These changes then flow down into retail pricing. What appears as separate price increases across industries is often connected to a single underlying pressure that spreads through transportation systems. Warehouses and distribution centers also play a role. Many of them now operate with automated systems that adjust inventory levels and distribution costs in real time. These systems are designed to optimize efficiency and reduce waste, but they also respond quickly to changes in input costs. When multiple systems across different companies react to the same market signals, their pricing behavior can begin to look synchronized, even without direct communication between them. Another layer is pricing software. Many companies today use algorithmic systems to determine prices dynamically. These systems analyze demand, competitor pricing, seasonal patterns, and cost inputs. Letters. They then adjust prices automatically or recommend changes to decision makers. When multiple companies use similar models and similar data sources, their pricing decisions can begin to converge without any intentional coordination. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. When different industries rely on similar data signals, they often produce similar reactions. Not because they are connected directly, but because they are interpreting the same reality. If raw material costs rise, if energy prices increase, if demand shifts, the response across multiple sectors can appear aligned. The system does not need coordination to produce similarity. It only needs shared conditions. Energy markets play a central role in global pricing. Oil, gas, and electricity influence almost every production process. When energy prices fluctuate, the effects are not limited to one industry. They propagate through manufacturing, transport, agriculture, and retail. This creates a shared pressure environment where multiple industries experience cost changes at the same time, even if they are not directly connected to each other. Financial markets add another layer of complexity. Commodity prices, currency fluctuations, and investor expectations all influence business decisions. Companies often adjust pricing not only based on current costs, but also on expected future changes. This means that anticipation itself becomes a factor in pricing. When expectations align across markets, decisions can appear synchronized even before real-world changes fully. Information now travels instantly across the world. News, data, and market signals are shared in real time between industries and regions. This means that companies are often reacting to the same information at nearly the same moment. When everyone sees the same signals at the same time, independent decisions begin to converge naturally. Not because of coordination, but because of synchronized perception of reality. Inside companies, decision makers are increasingly guided by data dashboards. These systems aggregate global information and present it in simplified form. While this helps improve efficiency, it also reduces variation in interpretation. When different companies rely on similar dashboards, built from similar data sources, their decisions naturally begin to align more closely over time. By this point, the investigation had uncovered a crucial insight. There was no single hidden controller behind the price movements. Instead, there was a network of shared pressures, shared data, and shared systems. Each company was reacting independently, but to very similar inputs. Over time, these small similarities accumulated into large-scale synchronization across industries and countries. At this stage, one important conclusion became clear. There was no single meeting where all decisions were made, no hidden organization controlling prices from behind the scenes, no central authority issuing instructions. What existed instead was something more subtle. A system of independent actors responding to the same environment, under the same pressures, using similar tools. And this is what made the pattern so difficult to recognize at first. Different industries do not operate in isolation anymore. Retailers, airlines, logistics companies, and manufacturers all rely on interconnected systems. When one part of the network experiences pressure, the effects spread outward. Each company reacts according to its own logic, but the inputs they rely on are often remarkably similar. This creates outcomes that appear coordinated, even when no coordination exists. For consumers, these changes feel simple but consistent. Prices go up, budgets become tighter, choices become more limited. Most people do not see the systems behind these shifts. They only experience the result at the point of purchase. A number on a screen, a total at the checkout, a fare on a ticket. The complexity behind those numbers remains invisible. What looks like a simple price is actually the endpoint of multiple systems interacting. Supply chains, energy markets, logistics networks, financial expectations, and algorithmic pricing models all contribute. Each factor alone may seem minor, but together they shape the final number that appears on a receipt. And because these systems evolve together, their outputs often shift in the same direction. Over time, this creates a world where reactions become increasingly synchronized, not because decisions are centrally controlled, but because the environment itself becomes more uniform. Shared data leads to shared interpretation. Shared interpretation leads to shared action. And shared action produces patterns that look coordinated even when they are not. Globalization has made economies deeply interconnected. A change in one region can influence outcomes on the other side of the world. This interdependence means that companies are no longer reacting to isolated conditions. They are responding to a shared global system. And when that system moves, many parts of the economy move with it. From the outside, it can still look like separate decisions made by separate organizations. But from a structural perspective, many of those decisions are shaped by the same inputs. This creates the illusion of coordination. In reality, it is convergence through shared conditions rather than direct control. The most important realization is not that someone is controlling prices. It is that control is no longer necessary to produce coordinated outcomes. When systems are connected, optimized, and driven by similar data, they naturally begin to move together. This is not conspiracy. It is Structure. As the investigation comes to an end, the pattern becomes clearer. Prices rise together, not because of a single decision, but because of many decisions shaped by the same environment. The system does not need central control to appear coordinated. It only needs shared conditions, shared data, and shared reactions. In the end, the question was never about one company or one industry. It was about the structure of the modern world itself. A structure where information travels instantly, where systems are deeply connected, and where decisions made in one place can influence outcomes everywhere else. Prices rise together not because someone decides it, but because the world now reacts together. And as these connections continue to grow, separating cause from effect becomes more difficult than ever before.